Hello class, welcome back. We're beginning again with this idea of proportions and arithmetic relationships, ideas that came from a well-known teacher in the past, Riley, who was an illustrator. And so I'm going to show you a back view and its landmarks. It gets a little tricky at times, so try to follow closely. I've got my little skeleton here that I'm going to show you, and we talked about in our last class the pubic bone, which is here being the midway point. Now we're looking at it from the back view. So the back view, you're estimating the pubic bone at the bottom of the sacrum, which is right there, and so that's our midway point. So what's going to happen with that, what makes it a little tricky now, when you see a person, with a person here, you've got the sacrum that's going to be here, which is our midway point. However, our measurement, when you measure, we are going to be coming down to the bottom of the muscle, the gluteus maximus, when I begin to break it down. So it gets to be a little tricky when I talk about it, but you want to pay attention to that. The halfway point, as we talked about, just to refresh it, if you don't remember, from the front it's the pubic bone, but the other thing as a landmark for us is coming across to what we call the great trochanter. That's this boxy bone on the femur bone, and you can see it there in the left and right. It's the widest point of the figure, and it's the midway point of the figure. So when I draw this, I'm going to draw it now, and I'm going to have all of you draw along with me so that you can pay attention very closely, because when I'm finished with this, you'll be turning the tape off and you'll be getting online, and you're going to be searching out a figure for a standing back view, and you're going to do this from an image on the computer. So we will begin. So to begin is what we're going to do, like we've done in the past. We're going to start with a vertical line. So I'm going to place this vertical line thinking about roughly how big I want to do this. And all of you will do the same. You want to place a nice vertical line on your piece of paper. This is going to represent the top of the head. This is going to represent, of course, our feet. So we're locating the pubic bone, and as we mentioned, the pubic bone is midway. So I'm trying to estimate it, and that's all we can do. And then we'll make our measurement to make sure it's accurate and how far off we are. So that's pretty close, so I'm going to leave it. So we've got a good midway point, and as we talked about, this midway point is representing the pubic bone from the back view as well as it is from the front. Now, if we take this division from our head to the pubic bone and you break it down again in half, all of you search for that halfway mark. I'm going to search for it. I think it's a little low, so I'm going to raise it up just a shade. Make sure it's fairly accurate. I am, now that I think about this, you can, I've got a pretty dead center. I am going to keep it where I had it. I'm going to keep it just a shade lower than midway. Sometimes with the head looks better with this measurement when I do it. So it's just a little lower than midway. So what it's going to do is it expands this. This is representing now the bottom of the scapula. Okay, so the scapula is the bone on your back. This line is now representing that. This is the sacrum, which is your pubic bone from the back, if you want to call it that. Now is what we're going to do if I break this down. So if I'm here and I've got this as midway and I go up, I should be at the top of the head, which I am. So if I take this and divide this in half, again, you're gonna figure out now where the head is. So I'm going to take this, feels a little bit off, it's close, actually it's pretty good, so I'm going to leave it. So that's going to be where our head's going to be. So from a back view with the head is what I'm going to do is just go on and place a ball up here. So you want to do the same. Place a ball. Do not bring it to that construction line, because this is representing the cranium. I'm just trying to get it dark enough here. So is what you want to check with this measurement. You want to check the width to its height, and it wants to be equal. So it wants to be a decent ball. This is the cranium as you can see it here. Now is what we're going to do is with our cranium from the back view, we're just going to do it almost like the front view. Is what I want is the lower part of the jaw, and we're going to bring it down to here. So basically is all you need is this lower part of the jaw. Okay. Now, with the back of the skull is what you're going to notice. I'm going to show you a skull in a minute. It flattens out here like this. So it appears that this point of the ball is cut off. And so now is what we get is we get our top. It comes to a wide point. This wide point, I am going to mark it on my other side. It's a landmark that I didn't give you, but I am going to get you familiar with it when we do the head. And then is what happens is from that wide point, it begins to angle in a little bit like this. And you get a little bump here, which is known as the mastoid process. And my charcoal isn't dark enough, so you might have a hard time seeing it. So I'm going to do the same on this side. It makes its curve. It comes around. The mastoid process is a little process right there. Okay. Underneath this skull, there's a bottom plane that's going to look like this. There's a curve here. So as I make this curve, we shall, there we go. So we got this curve, the back of the skull, and now is what we're going to do is from the wide point, which is here, that's known as the parietal eminence, we're going to make a little curve like this. And the same on this side. It'll divide our back of our skull like that. Okay. So, with this little idea, with the skull, is what you're going to see is from the back view, you're going to see the widest point. This widest point for us is important. It's going to straighten up where my hands are, and it's going to start to veer in ever so slightly. The mastoid process that I was putting, probably had a hard time seeing, it's this little bump here, becomes an important landmark because the large muscles of your neck connect very straight on the back, on the skull, and here's the underplane underneath. That's going to be important as we connect muscles to it. So we've got it somewhat set up there. I'm going to try to make it. It's a little hard because it's small, but I am going to try to make it just a little clearer. As the mastoid process. These are going to become guidelines for us. Anyways, so now we've got the back of our skull. The jaw would come in at a little bit of an angle, and then it makes a break right about there, and then it's going to angle in about there. Okay. Now, right about here is what we're going to get is an important landmark right here. I'm just going to make a dark dot so you can see it. So that's our 7th vertebrae spine. Now, it's hard to see on this little skeleton, but the 7th vertebrae spine on an actual skeleton sticks out. That's one of the landmarks I'm having you look for. The reason why, again, on this one, it's a cheap thing, but that's the highest point of the rib cage in the front. It usually comes down at an angle. So this point, when we draw the ellipse, as you'll see in a moment, it's going to hit that point. So anyway, so now we've got that, and that's going to represent our seventh vertebrae spine, that's right there. And then we're going to take our shoulder line, and it's going to come just below that. So I'm going to take it right about here. Okay. So this is representing the shoulders. The shoulders are going to be here. It's where the scapula is. The seventh vertebrae spine's a little bit higher. So I've got it pretty close there. So is what we want to do with our shoulders, like in the front view, you take the width of the skull and you measure it. And this side wants to be the width of the skull. You take the width of the skull, measure it. So now we know our shoulders for the width of the head would be like that. So now he's in, as far as the shoulders to the head and the placement of the head, it should work well. Now, is what we're going to do, as I mentioned when I got started, we're going to take the gluteus maximus, that's the lower part of the muscle of the hip, and we're going to put it about this much lower than our midway point. As I mentioned, showed to you one more time on this illustration. So one more time on the illustration is what you're going to see. The bottom of the gluteus maximus, and then the midway point is up a little bit at the pubic bone, or in this case, the sacrum. So you want to make that measurement so that we can break our points of measure now down. So is what I've got to do is find midway between the bottom of the scapula and the bottom way of the gluteus maximus. So I'm going to strike that in, and we are going to measure it. It looks a little bit high, which is good because I need this thing to be a little lower. So as I measure up, it looks very close now. So we come up. On your drawing, you're going to do the same. This is the pelvis. So we're taking that distance, should go to the bottom. If I've got it right, it goes to my seventh vertebrae spine, which it does. It goes right to here. So all the measurements are quite close. The other one I want to do is divide our halfway point, the bottom of the legs here. So we're going to take and find the midway point, and we're going to take it, hold on, I'm going to check something else out over here because my midway point, all right. So we want to go midway from our great trochanter. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to get out of your way in a minute, and we're going to say this goes into this just about perfect. So this would be, you remember from the front view, is what happened is the patella was just above that. So that's marking on this skeleton. Now from the back view, here's the patella, there's the tibia, there's the halfway point. So we take this with the feet, and it's exactly the halfway. On the back, it's the same sort of thing that's happening here. So we're taking from the back and going to the front. You're up to the great trochanter, and that's our midway point. So now we've got all of our landmarks in place. I'm going to run this out for you, and we're going to put our halfway point of the entire thing. So you can always keep it in mind. Okay, so now we've got our halfways. So, our hips, if I did make it a female figure, if it's a male figure, it would be roughly the same as the shoulders. I'm going to make it just a little wider so it can maybe be either or. I'm going to make it just a touch wider. So I'm going to run guidelines so that you can kind of see it to get the width of the hips. I am going to check it this way so I can get that accurate because that's important. All right, so now we got the width of our hips. So, like the front view of the figure, we take these shoulders, and here's Riley's idea of connecting the upper to the lower, connecting this now all the way to that point. I'm going to run it in just a touch tighter. So right about there will do. This shoulder, running it the same way down to the sacrum. So there's our connection from the upper to the lower body. Now, if I make a couple measurements and I take our cranium and we come down a cranium, I should be at the pit of the neck. The pit of the neck is now here. This is the height of the rib cage, and I'm just going to place it in right now. So the height of the rib cage from the back goes to the 7th vertebrae spine, like that. So this distance from this line to the bottom of the skull should be equal to the skull, which it is. And if we come down then one more time, we should be here, which we are. We come down one more time, and we're going to find the base of the rib cage. So again, a cranium, this is the sternum, as we talked about in our last class. From the back view, it would be here, which is now the back of the scapula. You come up, you're at the pit of the neck, but now you're at the high point of the back of the neck is the 7th vertebrae spine. So that's our measurements. And now is all we got to do is connect the points. So this is where the rib cage is going to start, and we're going to run that all the way to our construction line like that and come up with the feel. I could, like we've done before, I could just let that tie through. A lot of us do, especially in quick sketches, just to get the feel for the entire shape. So I'll make that just a little bit darker. So that's coming around, and now we got the general shape of our rib cage. The opening of the back of the rib cage would usually be about there, and it's going to come over like this. So this is now this point right here, which is a landmark, is the 12th spine. Okay, so he's in place. Is what happens with our lower point. I'm going to get rid of my guidelines. Is I am going to figure out roughly the knees. So I'm going to probably bring it in about to here, how wide I want it. It's probably going to be close. It's hard to estimate it this early, but we're going to guess at it. So make a couple of marks for the outside line. Like what we did on the front, we take this temporal line that I've got drawn here, and it moves through. This is what's nice about the temporal line. You bring it through, and it becomes the neck. The neck now is right in the right spot. And then it's going to move through like this. It comes out about the opening of the rib cage here. If I have it right, this distance to where it breaks the rib cage should be midway. So I might have it a touch. Let me get it. Okay, that's pretty close where I've got it. So if I take it from there to there, it should be just about right. So right where it breaks, they say it's about midway with Riley's approach. So it's right about there. It breaks through, hits our widest point of the hip, and then it's going to begin to move in to our guideline here. We're going to do the same on the other side. So again, this becomes the neck. So the jaw would extend beyond it up here just a little bit. So you're watching for it. Takes a little bit of practice. And then you're coming in about here, and then it breaks right about at the opening of the rib cage. And then it's going to come down to our widest point, and then in. I've got to make sure, it looks a little off, so I got to make sure this line is equal. It's a little wide, so I'm going to bring it in. You want it to be symmetrical. This first one, just a real symmetrical. And then this line is going to bring itself into about there. So very much like the front, a few differences. Something tells me I'm going to have to make this a little narrower, so I'll do it now. Okay. So now we're getting our pieces in place. Is what I'm going to do is place on the sacrum. This is the landmark, the back of the bone for the sacrum. And the sacrum from this angle, from where I've got it here, is going to be now placed about here. This charcoal I'm using is just a little softer, so I'm going to place it in a little darker. So that would be the top of it. It would be a convex feel from the back like this. The triangle would only come in to the pubic bone, like right to here. Usually a little bit concave, a little bit concave. So that's the sacrum. It would stop there. Then is what would happen is the gluteus maximus, you would just see a dividing line like that, come into one general line. So the top of the pelvis is going to carry itself up to about here, pretty close to my guideline. Guideline is here. It kind of comes to a peak in a sense when you see the skeleton. It would come up here, it would hit the edge of the skin. You would feel that point if you touch the person. And then the pelvis kind of moves back in like this. So anyways, it's going to roll up like this, reaches its high point, comes around. I'm going to use my guideline. It would fall right about the top of the sacrum, hits the edge of the figure right at this point, and then moves in like this, okay, giving us this butterfly shape. The muscle mass here would come out probably about as far as that. Muscle mass here would come out about as far as this. Usually a slight curve around the great trochanter. And the great trochanter of your leg is this boxy shape. It's our widest point. This is the neck. So what happens is that neck from the bone would be in here like this. The boxy point would be right where I've got the construction line, and that would be our widest point right there. So usually what happens with a figure is this line will come around and will tuck in like this. From the back view, this line comes in. I'll try to get it in here where you can see it. It'll tuck in like that. And then it comes, this line comes out of it and around the bone. This one comes in, this one comes out. I'm going to exaggerate it. So it does that. So you get that sort of feel. And then this kind of goes in like that. Okay. And that becomes the back part. This is one of your landmarks on the back, this edge of the sacrum. This is the other one, this triangular shape. I'm just going to make it real dark. Landmark, 12th rib, landmark from the back view. So these are landmarks that I need you to find. This is a landmark. This is our great trochanter from the back. When we make the beanbag shape, that's the guideline for it. So when you're doing the beanbag, which I'll show you in just a moment, that is the point of measure from here to here, which are landmarks, which I'll show you in a minute, is the point of measure. So all of those become important landmarks. Is what we're going to get here is what I want to show you is the back of the neck. So there is a muscle here. So the shape looks like this. It'll start narrow here at the base of the skull. It's one of the reasons we do the skull as a ball and egg. And the muscle trapezius comes there. And as it comes down to my guideline of my 7th vertebrae, it widens like this. Now I'm going to try to use some darker charcoal and then edit some things underneath, since all of you are drawing along. You don't need that anymore. And so then this becomes wide like this. I'm going to bring it across. And the 7th vertebrae is right there. So when I complete this now with the scapula is the backbone. It's going to ride right on our construction line. So what's nice about these lines, this is our scapula. So the scapula is the backbone. I am going to have, especially if you're in intermediate or advanced, I'm going to have you put this bone in. It's going to make an angle like this. And then it's going to bring itself down to here. And then the opening is here. And then it comes in at a quick rate and over and down. So I'm going to place it in a little better with this just so that you can see it. Comes over at my construction line, it angles. Come on, charcoal. And then it comes over, around. Looks like that, okay? Now, the next one is going to do the same. It plays along that line. There's an angle right about at the plane break, but this stays on the rib cage, so we got to be careful with my angle. This comes down a little bit. The opening of the arm or the humerus bone would be here. This is going to angle in pretty quickly, makes a jog out and around. Next scapula. Again, if you're an advanced graduate study, whatever, I'm going to have you think about these scapulas. The interesting thing with the scapula, the spine of the scapula, some of you will be able to see it on this little thing. It goes up, so there's a curve, concave going down like that. So as what happens with this bone, it reaches a height about here, and it's out a little bit, not much, and it comes down, and it makes a general curve, and it comes down like this, and it makes a curve. Now, I know this is small. I'll try to get it in there for you just to see, mostly for the advanced students. So there's a little scapula there. Now, what happens is this muscle now connects to this point. So right where the seventh vertebrae is, but the muscle comes down, makes its curve, comes out like that. The other one will do the same. And that's the feel of the top of the shoulder that you are all going to become aware of. Okay. This angle does the same. It comes up. This comes up to about there. The angle of the spine comes down. Everybody's shoulder at the end goes down slightly. You get the feel of the trapezius muscle, and then that angles down. For the advanced people, this is really important. If you're in beginning, just pay attention. You'll start to get familiar with it as the class goes. This is going to wrap around for the spine of the scapula. And the top will be there. So then is what will happen. Our line is going to come, and it's going to connect to that point. Okay, so now it's in there pretty good, or at least you can kind of get the sense of it. Feel of the back of the neck, this muscle splits. I'm not going to get too much into the muscles. Mostly we want those landmarks, so this becomes the top of the body. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to work out the lower part and pretty much leave it. So I'm going to have you guys put a guideline right through the middle of the thigh. So find roughly the middle and drop a guideline all the way to the bottom. So find the middle on this side. I think we're close. This is our guideline to keep our feet and everything in shape. Okay? So with that guideline, I'm going to place the bottom of the foot. I'm going to do it with this charcoal because this one in my stick is not soft. So what you do is you make a angle up to your guideline. I'll try to make this darker. I know this is small. So you make a little curve shape like this, a little horseshoe shape. And then what happens is the Achilles tendon on the lateral side pulls way in. And on the inside, not so much. I'll get out of your way and you'll see it. So it looks like that. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm making, now this is important. This is following my guideline for the most part. And this is taking a strong angle in, and the Achilles tendon is narrow. And on the inside, it doesn't have that much movement. Okay, so it's almost straight. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to place the outside edge. I'm going to put the calcaneus, as it's called, and we're going to bring this up. The outside, or the lateral, meaning the outside, is going to take a strong concave this way, and this is going to meet it like that. Okay, so now you've got how the foot's going to sit. I'm going to keep the foot horizontal up against there. So now what we're going to do is, on the back of your leg, the calf is wide. It gets real full and angles strongly in. So what I've got to do is, if we are to take, the other thing I want to mention in passing, the back of the calf, the back of the what we call the gastrocnemius muscle. This is our bottom of the tibia, but the muscle itself comes high on the bone. So in other words, this might be hard to see, but if you look at the bone, here's where the patella would be, right in through here. This is high. The muscle on the back starts way up here and comes out this way. So it starts way above the bone. So it's starting above here. So from the back of the leg is what happens is because of the gluteus maximus coming down, the calf muscle coming up, this area is shorter in the back than it is in the front. So if I find roughly midway between here and the muscle itself, which is going to be about there on the drawing, then is what I'm going to do is find about midway here. So my midway, little points, you want to do the same on yours, it'll make it go quickly. That's about midway, so I'm going to use that as my guideline. I'm going to take this muscle, and what it's going to do is it's going to come up high on the outside. So it's going to come up about like this on the outside. I'm going to make a little guideline, and it's going to be wider than this point of the leg. The muscle is going to stick out a little bit. It's a little bit wider, so it's about like that. So I'm going to put these guidelines in a little strong just so that you can see them. This is going to do the same. I'm going to run this across horizontally so you get an idea. So it's going to look very much like that as our general structure will be. The last part, or part of the middle of the thigh, is what I'm going to do is take the middle of the thigh, and I'm going to keep the thighs together at this point, and then it's going to become concave between your legs, as all of you know, and then the muscle grouping that we talked about from the front of the figure will come through and connect to the top of the knee. Concave, like that, and then convex, your leg would meet in the middle. So that's the tendons working itself around the bone. So then you can begin to see the rhythm of the leg. We've got it moving together. So when we take the muscle now from the outside, I'm going to take it from here. Now I'm going to use a guideline from the middle. I'll make a point from the middle of this leg, middle. We're going to use a guideline. It works really nice. It's another rhythmic line that this is going to come through, and if I connect these points, you're going to get this connecting to the calf, and it comes right through our center. And then this is going to move quickly to the tendon like this. So it's going to move quickly in like that. Now, this charcoal is not as dark as I originally thought it would be, so I'm going to go over it. So you connect that point to the Achilles tendon. I'm going to do the same on the other side. You bring this as your guideline. You connect it. You'll hit the edge of the leg here. Connects to the wide point of the muscle that we set up. Quickly move it in to the tendon. And the muscle really gets wide on everybody's leg. Okay, it's going to do this sort of thing. On the inside, I think everybody's got that. I'm going to get rid of my guideline just so it doesn't get in the way. On the inside now, so now we've got this overlapping on the outside of the leg. It becomes a straight line ultimately, like that. And then we're going to put the inside one on. So now it starts narrow, and it gets really full, touches and moves in. So I'm going to double over it again, like that. And then the same on this side. So this comes up, comes way out, and the muscle would pull in like this in the inside of the leg. Okay. Then as what we're going to get is on the inside, there'll be a little bit of a heel. I am going to try to, if possible, darken these lines just a shade so you can see it. So it's going to do that. On the outside of the leg, following I'll take the inside. I'm going to take a line on the inside and keep it pretty close, pretty straight. And then it's going to hit the guideline. take me a second here, whoops, to get a little more of the charcoal out. It's going to hit that guideline, the ankle, and on the inside of your foot, the ankle is high, so it's going to hit there, and it's going to come in. On the outside, the ankle is low. It's going to follow the guideline. I'm going to get rid of it in the drawing just so that you can see what I'm doing. It would follow the guideline like this. The ankle would be here, and there'd be a little thickness, and it would move down for the edge of the foot. So this sort of thing would happen. And the inside, the ankle would be high like that. So then you'd have the feel of the foot on that side. On the inside, we're going to do the same thing. Ankle would hit, come down on the inside of the Achilles tendon, and I'll try to keep it the same. On the outside, I'll get rid of our guideline. And on the outside, the line would follow the guideline. Ankle would be low. And we have our foot out there. Okay. So, get rid of the guideline so it's clear. I want you to keep your guidelines, obviously, in. Now, on the back of the leg, you see what looks like an H. That's why it gets its name from hamstring muscles that are in there. Last part we'll think about is we'll take right about here, there would be an ear. And right about here, coming around, there'd be an ear. The edge of the face would come in. So they would be out there. In here, we would get the bone of the arm. So it's a little round bone at the top of what we call the humerus. And then we're going to get a sense of this arm coming down. The muscle content to it makes it slightly curve in. The muscle would come to the arm would come to the base of the rib cage, right about here. Normally with arms, I'm going to get you guys to come up with these. These are known as condyles. Sometimes we just use them as little cylinders. I'm going to have you put them in there though. And this one's in there. This would come in, slight concave feel. Bottom of here is going to wrap around. Usually the condyle is a little bigger on the inside than the outside, but then we're going to take the lower part of the arm is what would happen. There'd be a slight curvature out like this, and it would straighten up right to about here. And then the other bone that's there would do this. There'd be an angle at the end of it. So this would be, I know this charcoal isn't behaving itself. There'd be an angle to the wrist right about here. There'd be an angle to the hand right about here. And then if we just thought of a simple say finger, like a simple feel of a mitt, say, there'd be a little angle off of it like that. This would follow that direction. So anyways, I'm going to do the same here. There'd be a curve in this, feeling to the bone. This bone would take on a feel this way, a slight curve to it, like that at the end of it. And then the wrist would come this way. And then the thumb, we're going to see it come off the top. And then we'll just take the simple feel of the mid of the hand. And we'll keep them like that. The last piece to the puzzle on the side is known as an oblique muscle. You're going to notice it on the models you draw from. I wish we could be working in reality, but you're going to see it on the models from the prints you use. It's going to come like this. It's going to It's going to come over the pelvis. That's the pelvis right there. It's going to make the connection between the rib cage and the pelvis. So it connects it together very nicely. Okay. Basically, that's your back view. I am going to clean this up just ever so slightly, and then point out one more time the landmarks. So this becomes a landmark, the acromion process at the edge of the shoulder. Acromion process. The acromion process is the spine of the scapula. The very end is known as the acromion process. That's just above the ball of the shoulder there. So I got a landmark there. This is the 7th vertebrae spine. You want that as a landmark because that's where our trapezius muscle is breaking. That's the top of the rib cage, which you need to know where it is, and the 12th rib, and of course the sacrum, the 3 points on the sacrum, and then the great trochanter. Okay. At this time, is what you would do is stop this tape, and you're going to find a back view. And when you come back, I'm going to show you how this works in light of like beanbag kind of figures. So find a figure online. Find something with a good standing figure. Could be male or female where the landmarks look good. And take your time and lay it out. And I'll see you in a minute. Okay, as we resume, is what we're going to do is I'm going to take a look at, say, if it was more from a front view, or I'm sorry, the back view. If this was a beanbag, it would look like very much like the front view. However, this is going to come in, and the beanbag, say, if we brought it out like this. Now, using a beanbag, kind of thinking of a curve, and then a curve for the lower part, and then this part coming through. And so as we were thinking before, this begins to be, we brought it through, which you can do on a beanbag if you want. You begin to get a lot of important landmarks just with a simple beanbag, and that's what's so nice about this shape. If I run it through here on the beanbag like I've got here, if you notice, this is high, this is low, and makes that curve, makes this curve. So in other words, we know this is our landmark of our widest point. We know it's the great trochanter. Mark it. Great trochanter, important landmark. Okay. From the great trochanter, you got the base of the sacrum. So the base of the sacrum is in there, and it would be convex like that on the back. So mark that as your landmarks. So we're trying to figure out now on a beanbag, and just without going through all of this in a shorthand way, where are these points? And then on a beanbag, of course, this would come down, and you get the feeling of the curve. If you were to continue legs on it, which we're going to, on your next drawings, you could just come down, you could estimate these things, and you could just, in a very general way, watch your character coming across, and you can begin to add the legs, right? This becomes our our center line through the back. This is a general curve like a beanbag would have. This is a general curve, which puts our 7th vertebrae spine at the top of the curve, which makes, if I put in a straight line through the beanbag, this is what's nice about the beanbag, it now gives us right the top of the acromion process. So now you got the top of the acromion process, and you got the curve of that to the beanbag that we're searching for. This corner, of course, would be that corner. And those that are in intermediate and advanced, I would have you on these beanbags search out the scapula. Try to get a feel for its angle. So in this case, again, there would be the opening, and it's just going to come in like a triangle, like that. If it were tipped, then is what you've got to imagine is this tilted. It's going to turn, and now off of this, because this angle on a scapula, it's going to look like this. So if a scapula starts this way, makes a little angle, comes down like this, technically it looks like this. in its general, simplest sense. It looks like that. There's a break right here. In reality, there's an angle, as we mentioned, like that. And then, of course, our edge of the chromium process. And this takes a little swing around, and it does this. And you get the spine of the scapula. So, this angle, 90-degree angle to this angle. So, if it's tilted, we look for that angle. And now this is at a 90-degree angle to this angle. And then this comes up, and then you can generalize it at the beginning. Then I would know if this is my 7th vertebrae spine, I would know then the back muscle of the cranium would be here, just like the drawing we just did. And then ultimately, the back of the skull would wrap around there like that. This arm we know then would go up, and then whatever it would do, this arm, just kind of feel them out. You could use stick figures on these things or whatever you want to do. But you're going to come up with, you're going to get online, you're going to look at figures, and we're going to look at front views and back views, side views, and you're going to be thinking of them in this sort of way. And you're going to be marking for me. So then I need you to mark on it this 7th vertebrae spine, label it, chromium process, label it, chromium process, and sacrum, the 3 points of the sacrum, great trochanter, and you're going to play with these things till you get pretty good at them. So then if we take another one, say, so if we take a angle like, say, like this, and we think of it as a beanbag, maybe put a little bit of a curve to it. And we'll put a bend to our beanbag. Maybe I'll use a guideline, trying to keep that like that. So anyways, you come up with some other shape. Now if this is a front view and we're thinking sternum, this is our break to the top part. This is the break to the bottom part, right? So anyways, we're doing this. Now we've got to get it from the front. The opening of that rib cage, we know that the opening of this skeleton doesn't bring it up well, but on an actual skeleton, it's high in the back. This is the front. But I've got to sense it through that 7th vertebrae spine. So if I'm coming around with a rib cage, it would be like this. And it would come in, and it would be around, and it would hit here, and then it would come in probably somewhere about there like that. And this would be then the opening of the top of the rib cage, okay? And now the sternum is in front, so you're seeing this point. If it had the clavicles on there, they're going to come up a little bit, as you know, and then come down this way, as we talked about last week, or the last class. And these are going to come up, and they're going to come to your chromium process, which is a very important point of measure. And then now this point is going to come down this way, and this is going to be our 12th vertebrae. So on this one, which I didn't put in, I didn't get that rib cage in there the way I should have, but you will do that, and then you will find the back opening, and you'll get that point right there, and you'll get this point right there, which then is better because then we got our shape taken from a beanbag to more of an actual piece. So now we're going to look for this, and I'm going to bring this one here, maybe in a little bit like that, maybe out, hitting this way, around and up. Say if it continued around, because I'm going to have you put some maybe heads on them as well. So then if we did the pelvis, if we imagine through it, so if you kind of take through the thing, trying to imagine what kind of a tilt this might have, and wherever we lock in those points, like I can say, this is my first point, say if I put my second point over here, more to the right, keep this one more to the left. Let me fix my charcoal. Be with you in a second. And then we try to determine what is our center doing, like that. So if this is the pubic bone here, and then you do the opening of it, and then you do the opening of it. So then you've got the points of the pubic bone, center. That shape becomes all important. Points, landmarks, 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 place them all. Okay. So anyways, say if this was the balance point, if there's a balance point, pit of the neck, right? You want to place that pit of the neck. If you're doing these now online, you want to watch that. We could imagine then maybe if there's a cranium in here somewhere. Front mass for the head, a little bit of the chin, and then maybe where this might hook up. Watch your guidelines. This is coming across the front. This is now the center line of the face. So those center lines can help give us the feel of what we're looking for, which you put the jawline over here. So now it looks like she's, or whoever, is looking more to the right. Okay, so then you do that, and then off of this, just get simple thinkings of heads. We're going to be talking about heads, and you could check your points. You could say this is going to come down foot roughly to here. Do that on yours, and then like we've done. So then we know that that leg's going to end up there. So we can use simple directions. This is the bottom of where the thigh ultimately would come in. And then we're just going to use simple guidelines for where this leg would be. Maybe if this foot is out a little bit, then begin to think of how far it might be out. And then this one might go from convex this way. Keep them like these Gumby figures, like we talked about. Height of the foot might be to here. So from this angle, you might see it widen like this. It might be coming out at us in that direction. And this one, we can just take it, bring it down for the heel, and then the feel of the angle of the foot. So very simple. You're going with very simple directions. It's easy to come back and build in muscles over it. You could build in those muscle tones or whatever is going on underneath it ultimately, but mostly just keep it general. I'm really after still these torsos, but have fun adding, imagining, legs and arms and legs. Try to get a sense. You look online, make a few up of your own. Whatever I have on there to do, I don't remember. And we might get the feeling of the hand moving in this way. Some of them, if you want, they could be kept like stick figures. Connect then the muscle. The muscle is going to connect here. It's going to be the top part of our shoulder girdle. And it's going to begin to give us how the neck would ultimately come in. But we're going to leave it like that. So anyways, they're going to be doing several of these. I am going to have you look at, especially drawing one, look at a guy named Proco. It would be Proco. Get online. I don't think it's something that I put on Canvas, but now as I think, he's going to show you some bean torsos. And look him up, do some drawings from him online. He'll show you some bean torsos, especially drawing intermediate and advanced. I need you to do these legs on them, the beginning people. You can do them if you can. If you're struggling with it, just try to work with bean torsos. Proco will show you things where you've got kind of a bean situation. So if this was our center coming around like this, I'm going to have you watch for those centers. And he'll talk about this on his site too. So look for it. Now, it's what I'm doing, and I'm going to have definitely drawing one students do this. If something overlaps like this would, and then you're going to get something else coming behind it, let your line strengthen it. Let it overlap. Let this go behind. If this is the hip, I'm imagining on the other side going around. Let this be a little stronger than that. But watch those kinds of overlapping shapes. Okay. Then you can imagine if we've got this as our center, we can take for the beginning students, Proco probably won't show you how to put the opening of the neck in there or with a high point of the rib cage. I'm going to have you guys do that though. Place in how the feel of this rib cage might be. Keep looking for that. Watch the sternum bone, even on these quick things. Watch where it'll go maybe this way. This one will go maybe to there, which means that hits inside. This overlaps. This is the opening of the pelvis. Then you got to try to get a sense of how does this line wrap around for those points. So we're looking for this point, that. So now you got to feel it around. That's what's nice about these shapes. And then it's going to come this way. And then the curve, of course, we were to look at the opening of the pelvis, it would be turned way like this on something like that. And of course, this is the hip on the side where a leg would come out. Okay. Drawing one, if you can't get legs on them just yet, if they're too much of a struggle, keep practicing with these beans and adding in the rib cage as we've talked about. Keep watching the 3 points for the pelvis crest. They're the pubic, anterior superior iliac spine, and the point of the pubic bone right there. Don't worry about the heads, arms, and legs if it's too much of a struggle. My emphasis for drawing one is still on proportion, still on these sorts of bean torsos now from the back, and if you can imagine some from the side as well. Intermediate and advanced, definitely start thinking about the scapulas and what they would look like if they were turned in various directions, and begin to add general legs to them. Do not worry about form at this point. I'm worried about balances and axis lines as you work these out. So at this point, you're going to be turning this tape off, and you are going to get online, and you're going to look up more figures, and you're going to continue the project. See you then.